So in case you couldn't tell, I've been on the internet for a very long fucking time. And a time I want to think about is the early 2000s when we had a new webcomic getting published every other week. Or at least it felt like that. Back then, I was getting fed link after link to some new and emerging webcomic, most likely about gaming, because that was like the only thing people made webcomics about. And you usually follow a cycle of I find a new comic, I start reading, inevitably it goes on hiatus, and if the hiatus is long enough, I would end up dropping the comic. So there was a lot of comics that I remember starting but never finishing. Recently, I found myself wanting to double back on some of these comics and find out what their current status is. See if any of them actually did escape from hiatus hell or end up, becoming a relic of the internet, or if they're still ongoing. And that's going to be the theme of this video. Now, in order to make sure that this video isn't like 20 hours long or however, because I could talk about comics that I've read forever and ever and ever, I'm going to try to limit it to 10 pieces that I feel belong in my personal Hall of Fame. These are pieces that I felt had great artwork, writing, and have somehow, even if I didn't completely finish reading them or the story didn't get finished, they managed to stick with me. Now, they're not going to be presented in any ranked order. This is just based on vibes. And at the end of the video, you're going to get a nice list of some honorable mentions. But overall, this is just a couple of comics that I feel are worth the attention. So right out the gates, we are starting strong with Sinfest. I fucking love Sinfest. The artwork is tight, the updates are regular, and depending on your political leaning, it can either hit or miss with the writing. I was first shown this comic like 10 plus years ago, and it's probably the only one on this list that I've regularly checked in on just because of the regularity that it updates with. Story-wise, the comic was about the main characters Slick and Monique. They were basically vehicles for the author's views to be presented about life and society in general. As time's gone by, the cast has evolved from just these two, and we barely even see them anymore, but overall, we have a cast of characters that extends all the way to God and the devil. Nothing is off the table in Sinfest. If hearing that God and the devil are being featured as supporting characters in the cast doesn't tell you how unhinged things can get, then I don't know what else to tell you. Next up, we got Two Gag, or Two Guys and Guy. This comic was about three friends who also happen to be complete sociopaths. The two guys in the comic are a blonde, helpless idiot named Wayne, a morally absent super genius named Frank, and the last guy is a girl named Guy, who serves as the apathetic, antisocial sadist in their trio. So unfortunately, this was one of the comics that didn't escape hiatus hell. But if more people can show the artist some love, we might be able to see this get some kind of revival. Story-wise, the comic was very episodic with little to no overarching story to it. You had a few recurring characters, but generally every strip had its own story and punchline. Overall, what got me here was the art and an appreciation for dark humor. At the time that I originally found it, it was a welcome detour from the usual gaming affair that I would find on the internet at the time. A moment of silence for the fallen, I guess. This is the most that remains of Holy Bible, a singular panel from a TV tropes page. I'm sure a deep dive into the Internet Archive might reveal some more comics, but this is what I got. Needless to say, this is yet another comic that would get you kicked from the most conservative Sunday religious studies. The best and most honest description I can give for this comic is that it was attempting to be a parody of the Bible. I know, it's probably culturally insensitive and probably highly offensive. Thus why I was glued to it immediately, because the stories were so wild I had to fact check, and a lot of the time the authors weren't being disrespectful, not that I can remember. This comic was a fun and humorous way to look at Judeo-Christian mythology in the same way we look at the Greeks and Romans or any other cultural origin story. Exterminatus Now. So I might talk a lot of shit about everyone making a gaming webcomic back in the day, but I'll admit, due to the inspiration of this particular comic, me and a few friends were inspired to try and start our own gaming cultured webcomic at one point, and of course I was the artist at the behest of my friends at the time. I caved and drew Sonic-style furry characters for our little webcomic. Looking back on it, I could have probably continued drawing a comic, but I was, and still am, an art diva, and just wasn't feeling it. I couldn't stand it. Didn't want to draw cringe Sonic OCs and put my name on it. Thankfully, it's been lost to the internet forever and ever, but this webcomic was actually something worthy of your time. Exterminatus Now. Unfortunately, this comic is pretty much done, but still online for fans to read. The comic ran from 2003 to 16, 13 years, not a bad run. The story of this comic is completely lost to me, but the comic stays in my memory because of the fact that it did inspire some writer friends of mine to, at the time, to want to make their own webcomic that had Sonic OCs. What I remember enjoying was that it was kind of cool to see a comic with these Sonic-styled characters that were doing not-so-Sonic-style things, especially when DeviantArt was being flooded with furry fun filth images and ruining the oh-so-wholesome image of the Sonic franchise. Looking back on it, I think it really was a product of its time, because at that point in time, just about everyone was trying to edgelord the fuck out. You had the edgy Sonic Underground cartoon that aired in '99, so by '03 when this comic began, everyone was catching reruns. By 2006, the Sonic franchise goes full edgelord by giving Shadow his first and only solo game, where he uses guns and a motorcycle because teleporting, super speed, anthropomorphic hedgehog totally needs guns and a motorcycle when it's been canonically established that on foot he's supposed to be fast enough to keep up with Sonic, who moves at or faster than the speed of sound. So, for someone in my early teens at the time, end of '03 I would turn 14, this comic was a fresh look for familiar seeming characters without ruining the image or characterization of characters we loved growing up with. I think that's why my friends loved it so much. Think about that. Makeshift Miracle. If you take nothing away from this video to read, then I guarantee you'll find something to look at that's pretty. This right here is gorgeous as a motherfucker. Look at this. Page fucking 1. Right off the cut. Just stop it. I'm not even gonna bother telling you the story because it was so pretty that you should just read it even if you're illiterate. And I can't even remember the story. Literally the only thing that got and kept me here was the art. I'm sorry to the writer. I kept following faithfully until the end only cause I would keep checking just to see this delicious artwork. If no one told me it was over, I might still be looking for updates to this day. Penny and Aggie, currently over but available for a quick read. The artwork reminded me of comics in newsprint papers. More specifically, it reminded me of Archie comics. The story is a slice of life, coming-of-age drama about two people who form an enemies to friends relationship. Anyone ever watched the show Ready or Not? Sorry, Canada only. Penny and Aggie have the same kind of opposites attract friendship as the main characters in Ready or Not by the end of the run. For the first bit, they're doing the weekly strip where they dunk on each other in a constant contest of one-upsmanship. Sort of like Daria and Quinn at the start of their series. I should have referenced them first. Eventually, there's a point where it turns and they stop fighting when things started to get real. It was this balance between slice of life and heavy coming-of-age social drama that got me hooked, especially in '04 being a high schooler myself at the time. Looking for group. For a nice change of pace, I'm going to talk about a comic that isn't already dead and done. LFG has been running since November of '06, so it's almost 20. Old enough to at least buy liquor here in Canada. Unfortunately for me, I did fall off reading way back when. I'm still happy to see that they've been killing it since back then. I'm not going to sit too long on this, but it's around on their site, and they have a very nice collection of animated shorts on YouTube. Misfile. Imagine a gender-bender, time regression, gay romance story with Initial D street drift racing as a backdrop or side plot. I like Ranma, I respect Initial D, and at the age I was when I found this, I was invested enough to follow until I moved on. Admittedly for me, the story was there, but the art was just not hitting the dopamine receptors hard enough to get me to stay. Great writing though, and as of my writing this, I believe the comic is still up and actively updating, so it's not over and it's definitely worth a read if you're into any of the things I mentioned. A quick note about all the comics that I'm mentioning here today. They are free to read and enjoy, at least the ones that are still online, and if you can, shoot the creators a little bit of support, be it financially or just by liking, sharing, and supporting their work. Thank you very much. Questionable content. This is a comic that blew up like 10 years ago. Not gonna lie, I was a bit of a hipster when I dropped it, only because everyone else around me got into it and my content filters weren't showing me anything new, so I chose to leave and forget it until now. Surprise me, the comic is still running strong to this day. This comic initially starts off being very similar to most gaming style comics back then. The basic setup of a single guy gamer in a couch doing the straight man funny man routine with someone else. That was like the standard setup for most gaming comics back then. It eventually evolved into being much more than just another gaming comic, as the art and the story evolved into a whole world. I wonder if anyone's made an offer to produce an animated series out of this. Give it the 12 episode seasonal anime Netflix treatment and see how it goes. Who knows? Final spot on the list goes to Apple Geeks. So for the record, I'm not a fan of iOS or Apple products. Dumb people boost the profile of an inferior product to inflate its value via hype. A clear example of value being perception, like Chinese handbags stamped with the Yves Saint Laurent logo when they get to France. Anyways, it's easy to see how I got here if you've been watching this video. The artwork is solid, the writing was good enough, and it's still up and free for everyone to read. Don't worry, the story isn't propaganda to make you buy Apple products. It's just about two guys and a couple of their friends who happen to build a really cool robot made out of apparently mostly Apple products. Not the most compelling story, but strong visuals for sure. Congratulations, you've made it to the end of the video. So if you are mad that I didn't mention something that you liked, or I should have been reading something that you feel that I should have stayed on for a little bit longer, then please put it up in the comments. I'm always looking for something new to read. I'm always looking to be entertained. That's why I say keep me entertained. Now, the first honorable mention goes to Mega Tokyo. I wasn't a big fan of Mega Tokyo. Never really cared for it when it was it still is regularly being published, and I might take the time to go back and look through this. 3-Panel Soul, another comic that was all style and no substance for me. There wasn't really much in terms of an overarching story. I didn't really get a chance to get close to any of the characters in the story, but visually it was, and still is, a pretty freaking solid piece of comic. VG Cats and Penny Arcade, two titans in the webcomic space, and they are still running over 20 years solid. Art was always been great. The comic, in terms of story and content, they are both very much gaming comics, so that's kind of why they weren't included in this list. Finally, there's Miss Dynamite. If I'm being really real with myself, I should have probably put this in one of the spots for the main. Like I said, I chose based on vibes. I didn't really think too hard about it. But Miss Dynamite is one of those comics that I would, if I had the choice to redo this whole list, I'd definitely put it up there. Not only is the comic really good, but the animated shorts on Newgrounds are also really good as well. Worth your time. Also, go and bother the creator, right? Sirkowski. Show him some love, of course, because again, the art is great, and if maybe you can give him some of that energy to get him back in the driver's seat to make something happen again, then that would be cool. In all honesty, I think that Miss Dynamite might even be great if it was pitched as an adult animated series for like Netflix or something. Because I mean, Lord knows I'm tired of seeing every fucking Family Guy clone get greenlit over there.